The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back in, everyone. Hour number 2 is off and running here on First and 12. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you. We hold it down every single week, talking Big 12 football and especially BYU and Utah football. And in this hour, we got to start things off with BYU's big win over the Wyoming Cowboys.
The BYU Breakdown.
Cougs take down the Pokes 34-14. And Alex, this was, I felt a game that there were some missed opportunities by BYU. Oh, yeah. Even Chase Roberts himself said BYU should have probably won this game 60-0. They left some opportunities out on the field, but still, BYU's 3-0 for a team that was maybe thought to be a 4-win team. They're looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, Jake Retzlaff had that bad pick at the beginning. He had another one that should have been picked off the very next drive. I think I was a little confused on some of his throws, and I think he probably was looking around. Here's the thing is he knows how much scrutiny he's getting every week, and yet BYU, the running back situation is very weird right now. However, your third, fourth, and fifth string running backs actually did quite well, and even Jake Retzlaff, what did he have? 10 carries for 62 yards. He had some movement on the ground as well, but obviously the big thing was they were able to get that ball going through the air. They mixed it up. Chase Roberts had a phenomenal day, 6 catches, 129 yards, and he only had 1 catch in the second half. So he did tons of work, and everybody was getting involved. It was nice to see. I mean, look, Gary Bohannon got in the game, threw a nice little bullet to Reiner Swanson. Was it Reiner Swanson who was the tight end who caught that one? I mean, look, there was a lot to be said about this game, but not the least of which is the defense, the Jay Hill defense. Holding and listen, the Wyoming quarterback. Look, we heard about the offensive line being woeful, right, during the week. It turns out the offensive line, they showed up to play a little bit harder than I think that people may have anticipated, because you didn't see as much pressure from BYU this week. But what you did see was awful quarterback play, and I'm telling you, they rattled Wyoming quite a bit, and that was not a good Wyoming team, and BYU made them look even worse. But, yeah, you're right. The 34-14 score doesn't really reflect what the game really felt like. It was a little bit more lopsided than that, but that means you have some stuff to clean up if you're Kalani Sitake this week.
I will say Wyoming, they did have opportunities to get some additional points as well. If they had a quarterback that had any ounce of accuracy, they could have scored a few more points, because there was a 4th down play where they beat Talon Alfrey into the end zone, and Svoboda just straight up missed his receiver, and I think it was Jalen Sargent, and it wasn't even in the same zip code. And BYU had missed opportunities too, and you bring up Jake's first interception, and I thought I was okay with that, because ultimately Wyoming took over on their own 1-yard line. It felt
like a punt, in a way.
It was like a punt, but then there was that one where he just throws a deep ball, and there's 2 BYU receivers off to the right, and a good contingent of Wyoming defenders, and it was closer to the Wyoming defenders, nowhere close to the BYU receivers. So mixed bag passing for Jake Retzlaff, and I think also too that the running game, I come away feeling like, yes, they did enough, but man, you need LJ Martin back as soon as possible. You need Hinckley Rapati back as soon as possible. LJ's dealing with an ankle, Hinckley a knee. And I thought Miles Davis was okay. He had 7 or 15 yards, 8 carries.
8 carries, 15 yards. That's not okay. That is not good.
It wasn't good. I mean, I feel like there were moments, though, he had like a chain mover or two. I had low expectations coming into the game with those guys.
Why no Enoch Nawahine? Because we heard all week about how it was going to be the Enoch Nawahine and Miles Davis show, and it didn't turn out to be anywhere near that.
Yeah, Enoch, he got banged up, and he was going through warm-ups, pregame warm-ups. He was suited up for the game, but he got banged up to where he did not even play.
In practice? Yes,
this week. And so he doesn't even go. And then so that's your third-string running back. So you had your top three guys, or four-string running back, excuse me, three out of your top four running backs banged up coming into this game. So then your second-string guy was Sione Imoa, no relation to the linebacker Sione Moa. I think they're actually cousins, but it's different guys. And they
throw the Imo in there so that you know the difference, right?
Yes, so you know the difference. But the best running back I think out of this group tonight was Pokayawa Hunga, who was part of the trick play that ended up being a 30-yard pass completion.
Flashy
to
dude.
Chase Roberts.
I like the speed. It was nice to see. It was nice to see him out there and kind of. I liked what he looked like, and you could tell because he's a true freshman, right? Isn't that what isn't that? I mean, these are young dudes who came in and got some carries, man.
Pokai is a true freshman. Sione Imo, a true freshman. Miles Davis, he's a fifth-year junior. He's been around for a while. And then Jake, and credit to Jake. He had 6 carries, 62 yards, as you noted, but he didn't put the ball on the turf at all. And he got upended on one where he was spinning.
It was a helicopter.
And he could easily lost it, and he didn't. So he deserves his props there for not putting the ball on the ground, because for the first 2 weeks, even against Southern Illinois, he had a carry that ended up with the ball on the ground. So he took care of the football when he did run. And if L.J. Martin and Hinckley are out for an extended period of time, Jake's going to have to be a factor on the ground, or maybe somehow find a way to utilize Gary Bohannon. He had 3 carries as well for 11 yards. And I will say Gary Bohannon, his cameo late in the game, it did get a big roar from BYU fans that were in War Memorial, because I think BYU fans, they really want to see what he's got. And he looked pretty good. Again, it's nothing that's going to say, is there a quarterback debate now this week? No, that's not the case. But, Gary is, for a guy that had not thrown a football in a game in 2 years, that was a nice ball he threw, that first one to Reiner Swanson.
Let me ask you this: do you think that the leash gets a little shorter, so to speak, when you're taking on a team like Kansas State? Would they pull the plug early in a game if he throws a pick, right off the bat against Kansas State, or puts the ball on the turf?
I'm trying to figure out what would be the scenario that gets A-Rod and Kalani to pull the trigger, because these guys have a lot of patience, and they just do not seem to do that at all. And I really felt like this was going to be the year where they would do that if needed.
But you do it against you. But you do like Wyoming. You can be patient, and I feel like Kansas State. Maybe if it is that first throw of the entire game, or the first drive of the game, because he has given the ball up the first drive of the last 2 weeks, and you know what? I know it was different this week than it was last week, and both were no harm, no foul, because the defense stopped it, and then they were able to score on the very next drive. But those are missed opportunities either way. That's the way the coaches look at it, and that's the way that it really was.
And what's scary too is next week they're going to go up against a Kansas State team that has, as a collective group, one of the best secondaries in the Big 12, and they still gave up 11 catches to T-Mac, the Arizona star, McMillan, but he's always going to get his.
Yeah,
it was
but
still,
zero touchdowns. Noah Fafita threw zero touchdowns.
That's the thing is K-State's got a pretty good secondary, and those passes that Jake was throwing against Wyoming, they probably get picked. And I think that's the feeling of, yes, the final stat line, just looking at it on its own and not getting context involved, it looks pretty good. But I feel like there's still this feeling of, oh, no, what's he going to do against, power conference competition? Because against power conference teams, he has not looked good at all, and including the win last week against SMU. Jake has struggled against power conference teams. His 2 best performances as a BYU Cougar have come against Southern Illinois and Wyoming, both of which nothing to write home about this season. So it's really going to ratchet up next week. And I think you make a good point that if it goes south in a hurry, you've got to be a little bit more urgent, because this is Big 12 play. And I think that you do not want to replicate what happened last year, where you start out 3-0 and then reality kicks in once you get into the league, because you've got a real opportunity. If you found a way to break through and spring an ups against K-State, man, Alex, I think that would be one of the best wins, maybe top 3 win in the Kalani Sitake era, just from a from what it means for establishing yourself in this conference. And they're knocking on the door. They're establishing an identity defensively, but the offense just still has this big question mark week after week against power conference teams because Jake is kind of maddening with some of his play at times. But, man, he gives you some glimpses that go, man, that looks really good with his arm talent.
Yeah, I think, they're the frustrating throws. But then when he was able to get one, and you saw obviously that Darius Lassiter, when he catches that touchdown, that was a heck of a play. He ducked out from a defender, he throws across his body and puts it right on the money, and then all he had to do was turn around, put that ball over the plane, and then they walked over. You could tell they kind of had like a little bit of a hey man, kind of moment, a little bit of hug it out kind of situation because it was frustrating, when you work all that week and you I would say, and I guarantee this is the case, the reps in practice are looking really, really good with Jake Retzlaff. Obviously, we've heard that. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes in practice, and then you get into game time and things get a little bit more dicey, You getting more nervous or whatever it is that he does. But there's a feeling, too, from BYU fans that's like, this is the Jake Retzlaff that you get every week, is a guy who is pretty inaccurate and then has some flashes. And pretty inaccurate against Kansas State is not going to get you the same result as pretty inaccurate against Wyoming. You're exactly right. All right, let's take another break here. We'll come back. We've got more to chop up around the corner. We brought you sound last hour from Kalani Sitake. This hour, let's bring you some sound from Kyle Whittingham and the win that the freshman quarterback Isaac Wilson delivered up in Logan yesterday. And we'll talk a little bit about what Kyle Whittingham, because he's a no-nonsense guy. He'll tell you how it was. We'll listen to that next. Stay right here. It is 1st and 12 on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
JJ and Alex are deep in Utah strategy and reaction. What the Utes did right and what they need to do better. JJ and Alex, Monday from 3 to 6 on the KSL Sports Zone.
Yeah, welcome back. It is JJ and Alex. No, wait. It is 1st and 12. I mean, we have all these promos talking about JJ and Alex. Settle down. But, yes, JJ and I do chop it up on the air 3 to 6 every evening on the KSL Sports Zone. Mitch Harper, of course, you'll hear him tomorrow on Cougar Nation. We'll see how the fans react. I would assume that it's trepidation. At 3-0, feel good about it, but there's a little bit of some nervousness from some fans out there. There was definitely some nervousness yesterday up at Utah State, where everybody was anticipating, look, this Utah State team struggled so mightily against USC, and a very changed USC team, by the way. It makes you look and you go, how on earth did they stick with Alex Grinch at defensive coordinator for so long? As soon as they made a change, they suddenly became an absolute power. And Utah, you would think to yourself, well, look, that's a better defense. They should be able to shut down Utah State, but not so fast. Utah State got off to a quick start. Kyle Whittingham after the game, a very Kyle Whittingham type of commentary, because there's some things his team did pretty well, but there's some things that Utah State did. At the very least, they came out, they were fired up more than Utah was. Here's what he said.
I thought Utah State played really well, had a good plan. Bryson Barnes, competitive kid. They were more ready to play than we were at the onset. We kind of sleepwalked through that first quarter, got things going after that. Can't tell you why we were not at our best in the first quarter, but we responded and ended up playing good football, particularly in the second half. Defense, I thought, played well, except we let them off the hook a couple times in some really third and long situations. 3rd and 20 plus, and it was a 3rd and 18. So, got to be able to get out of those drives. We can't have that happen. They did it twice. Isaac Wilson, thought he was much improved over his first 2 appearances of the season. Had some good numbers. Kai Bernard gave us another 100-yard plus game. Dorian Singer was more involved. That was good to see. And so it was a good win. Utah State, give them credit. They played hard. They are gritty and tough. And they're going to win some games this year. There's no doubt about that. But we got to go to work, because next week we got a big one coming up on the road. And it'll be a Big 12 really good test and contest. And we'll see what happens.
Kyle, how important is it to get Isaac a win like that in a hostile environment, having to come back and everything that way?
All good. Everything that you just said is positive for him to experience, and to come out with a win and put up 38 points and have pretty good numbers. He's just a true freshman, so he responded. I thought as the game went on, he settled in and got more comfortable, more confident. Made some plays for him. It was a great catch by Carson Ryan on the fourth down play in the end zone. That was a huge play, and it was really good to see Isaac step up and play with some real confidence.
How much of a turning point were those 2 first half interceptions?
Big turning point, huge turning point. Smith Snowden made a great interception, and that was a phenomenal play by him. And was Cam Calhoun's in the first half of the second?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
first half
it was
as well.
first half.
He played that just right. It was a cover 2. He shrunk back on the deep route, stole it underneath the deeper route. And then let's see what were some of the other highlights. He had a good pass rush. I don't know how many sacks we came up with, but we got after the quarterback pretty good. Didn't play the run particularly well. That was a good running back, though. That guy's a strong, physical runner. We need to play the run a little bit better than we did. But overall, like I said, it was a win, and they got to move on to the next one.
Is this the sort of offensive balance you want moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't digested all the numbers, but closer to what we're after, yes.
You've sort of mentioned for the past 2 weeks that Mekhi is the closest thing you have toward a running back one. If he keeps having performances like that, do you feel like he'll continue to solidify more of a guaranteed running back one role?
Well, he's certainly trending in that direction, and Mike Mitchell gives us some great supplemental carries, as does Dijon Stanley. Charlie Vincent has one in a couple of weeks. I don't think he had any carries tonight. I'd like to get Jalen Glover back in the mix. It's all about practicing well Monday through Friday and doing the things you need to do. But I thought that Mekhi is definitely making a case for being RB1. But again, he's a guy that he's not the biggest guy. Is he a 30 carry a game guy? No, I don't believe so. But he can give us 20 good carries a game. And I don't know how many he had tonight, but that's what he had last week. It was 19, I believe. So yeah, he's trending in that direction.
It seems like every time Caleb Lohner gets out there, he gets a touchdown catch.
Caleb Lohner is a weapon, and I think we need to find more ways to use him. I'm sure Coach Ludwig will, and he's got a big body. When he goes up on that jump ball at 6'7", he's literally, 13 feet up in the air. I mean, he's way up there, tough to defend, and you saw him make that nice catch tonight.
Keanu said that you were trying something new a little bit on defense at times, trying to mix things up. Then you went to the base defense that you have, and things did better. What are you kind of looking for right there?
Well, Bryson Barnes knows our defense inside and out. And so Coach Scally and the defensive staff came up with a few looks that he hadn't seen with different personnel groups. And I'm not going to say it was bad, but when we settled back to our stuff that we do all the time, we seem to have more success. And so that was the reason that we went into the game thinking we wanted to show different looks. And we had done that against SC in the championship game a couple of years back, and it worked extremely well. It was really a carbon copy of that, just didn't have as much success tonight.
Shorthanded and then to fall behind and have a deficit and to see them battle back, is that just a huge confidence boost, not just for the team but also for the coaching staff?
Should be, yeah, it is for me. I mean, I was proud of them, the way they handled adversity, and it was, like I said, great to see Isaac Wilson settle in and look like a real Power 4 quarterback. We're hoping obviously we get Cam back this week, and that's the plan, but it's comforting to know that Isaac is capable of doing just what you saw tonight or this afternoon. Okay, guys.
There you go. There's Kyle Whittingham after Utah takes down Utah State 38-21. Utes are now 3-0 on the season, and I would expect coming up here around the top of the hour at noon when the AP poll gets released, they're probably going to be in the top 10 unless there's some harsh critics in the pollsters again dropping the Utes. Last week that happened after the Baylor win, but I would expect Utah.
It was almost more. Last week it was like, hey man, how can we sneak USC past Utah? Oh, perfect timing. Yeah, I mean there's a little bit of that. I mean, I don't see him getting dinged that much. And I'll tell you too, what's going to happen this week is everybody's going to look and go, oh wait, Utah and Oklahoma State firing off against one another. That'd be nice to have a number 10 versus a number 11 or a number 9 versus a number 10, which is the type of matchup you're going to get this week. And here's the thing that we know about Kyle Whittingham. Like maybe the team gets a little bit rattled at a stadium they're not used to. Everybody's telling him all week how this is a rivalry game, and it really wasn't for these kids. It's the 113th meeting, but none of these players have ever played in it. They had to hear from everybody else third hand how big it was. You heard the players be like, yeah, it's not really a rivalry game to me. We're going to treat it the same way. But there was a little bit of that not getting it totally done at the beginning because it was a weird atmosphere. Oklahoma State down in Stillwater is the exact type of game that Kyle Whittingham will get his guys up for. And by the way, half of his guys responded, at Big 12 Media Day saying that this was the biggest game on the schedule, and they're not wrong, especially right now. You're talking about the two teams that are the highest ranked in the Big 12, both undefeated, and the two most tenured coaches in the Big 12, and two of the top three in the entire country in Mike Gundy and Kyle Whittingham. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
Me too, and a lot of eyes, of course, will be on Cam Rising this week and the status of his hand, and I would expect that he's probably going to play next week. I would think, as he was, warming up in Logan, but didn't officially give it a go as Isaac Wilson got the start in that win against the Aggies. But it's going to be a big game, and it's been what's been interesting about Utah through 3 weeks is they've had some sources of talent emerge on the offensive side, some additional reinforcements where you look at Caleb Lohner, that dunk play that they continue to go to with Lohner continues to have success. He had a touchdown grab. Carson Ryan, former UCLA transfer, he had a TD grab. I thought that was promising.
He bailed out young Isaac Wilson on that one. That was not a great play by the freshman, but I'll tell you what it was a perfect moment where you get a leader who comes in and says, okay, look, I'll take over here. It was a 4th down, and so it was a huge play. They needed that one. But, I'm gonna keep coming to the defense of Isaac Wilson. Here's the thing. You watch Bryson Barnes. Every time Bryson Barnes came in over the past couple of years, what was it? It was just a gap filler. When can you get to Cam Rising? And this was that too. But this is a true freshman, and at no point in the last 3 or 4 years with Cam Rising at the helm have you thought to yourself, oh, man, this is anytime a backup would come in, you don't think about it as being the next guy. Isaac Wilson has been coming in, and he got the starts. He got the start this week. He got all the reps in practice that he needed to get, and he turned a corner. He totally grew up this week, and it was what everybody was hoping he was going to do. And, it was a slow start, but he had a heck of a game, and it's exactly the way that and this is the future of the Utah program if everything goes to plan. And I think it's a great start for Isaac Wilson in his career.
Well, and I think that's why this injury with Cam, I know it's not as serious as what he dealt with last year, but that's why I think people have been, I don't want to say enjoy, but excited about the quarterback situation still despite no Cam, because Isaac Wilson is the guy. In 4 more months, he is the face of the Utah football offense going forward. And that day is going to be here quicker than we all realize. And I know they want to get to the playoff and make a run in that thing. But, once this season is done, Isaac Wilson is your guy. And it's always noteworthy, too, whenever Kyle Whittingham, appoints a true freshman. Because typically when true freshmen take on a spotlight role, whether it's cornerback, quarterback, they are going to be looked upon to be a big-time talent. And Isaac Wilson has insane talent. Like, I watched every down of Zach Wilson as a BYU player, and I watched a ton of his snaps as a high school player. Isaac Wilson is much farther ahead than Zach was at this juncture of Zach's true freshman season. Isaac is going to be a special football player for Utah, and I think that's why, yes, you want Cam all 12 games, but that didn't happen as we all expected. This is a nice deal because you are preparing him, and he's getting valuable snaps through the first 3 weeks. We didn't expect that, but it's going to be better off long term because Utah doesn't want to just be a one-hit wonder in the Big 12. They want to establish themselves as the top brand, the top program for years to come, and Isaac Wilson is going to have to be the guy that carries that, next season and beyond.
I was going to say real quick before we wrap this, too, is that he's so good with the media already, too, right? Yeah. I mean, he's a kid who knows what he's doing. He knows what to say. And it's got enough humility to it with the dash of bravado too, and I just think it's awesome. Like the reality is that he's going to have a really, really good career, and I think he's going to be super good. He knows it. It was nice for him to be able to throw a few touchdowns today, get it going.
It really was. It was impressive, and I think that Utah He's got a big one next week. He'll be interested to see how it plays out in Stillwater. We got to take a break, though. On the other side, it's the much-anticipated power rankings. Who is going to be atop the power rankings this week? We'll get to that next here on First and 12 on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome on in, everybody. It is a beautiful Sunday. Thanks for being with us. Football season. We're 3 weeks into this college football season, if you can believe it. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry, thanks for hanging out with us on a Sunday on First and 12. You can hear it right here on KSL News Radio or on the KSL Sports Zone every Sunday, 10 to noon. And then, of course, Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte hook you up with Cougar Nation tomorrow night on KSL News Radio. Myself and Jeremiah Jensen, JJ and Alex on the radio portion of the KSL Sports Zone. You can hear us breaking down all of these games, all the sound, all of it. So we'll have plenty of time to be able to get into not just the games that were over the weekend, but also the ones that we anticipate for this next one. But let's jump in our weekly bickering back and forth on how we're going to handle this thing. It is our power rankings in the Big 12. Let's get to it.
The Big 12 Power Rankings, a weekly rank of all 16 programs, from the elite to the bottom dwellers.
That's right. It's the 16-team power rankings here on First and 12. Every single week we roll this out on the program. Where should we start, Alex? Should we start at the top or start from 16 and work our way up?
Look, let's just tell the kids that mom and dad have been fighting, okay? Let's break the news to them. This is what's been going on. No,
Son, get back here. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation.
Start at the top, man. Look, no one wants to hear about the basement dwellers right off the bat.
Point.
Let's get to it. Let's get to the ones right at the top. We got in and we started looking at this thing, and you initially had given a bump to Oklahoma State. I don't know if I wasn't feeling it yet. Because I think that, your backup quarterback, Isaac Wilson, comes in. If Cam Rising's coming back this week, it's a totally different team. And I think Utah still deserves to be at that number one spot.
Yeah, after kind of settling down and looking past the cauldron that is Tulsa Skelly Stadium, I put Utah back at number one, and I think that's fine. But, hey, it all sorts itself out because next week these top two teams play, and number two in the power rankings this week is the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I think what was noteworthy, too, with Oklahoma State is that, Ollie Gordon wasn't that great again, but Alan Bowman, he put out film that says, hey, we got to respect this guy. So, Whittingham and Scally, when they're dissecting and putting together this defensive game plan this week, it's not just stack the box. Bowman looks like he's improved quite a bit, and that's given me kind of a new optimism about Oklahoma State's chances because I thought, just stack the box. And, yeah, Ollie Gordon's going to get 120, but you're not going to see much through the air with Bowman. He's doing a nice job, and he's playing much better than I thought he would this season, so credit to him.
Here's a little fact for you. Alan Bowman, Grapevine High School grad. Grapevine High School, also where all of my siblings graduated from and where I started high school, and also the graduation place of Post Malone. Post Malone and Alan Bowman, a lot of swagger between those two, all right?
On my drive to Laramie, it's just a lot of Post Malone. I was playing that album front to back. It was wonderful.
Oh, my goodness.
It felt very country I needed to with the F1 Trillion. It's the country mix. So it's
he's turned a corner. He's turned a little bit of a country corner. He knows how to market himself. So yeah, you're right though. I mean, like we were talking about this. Ollie Gordon won the Doak Walker Award. He might be right now the third, fourth, or fifth best running back in this league. That's how good the RBUs are across this conference. And so Oklahoma State being at number two, got to put them there because Utah and Oklahoma State, both 3-0, both facing off against one another this week. Gosh, we're getting spoiled here at the front end of this thing. BYU taking on Kansas State early, and Utah and Oklahoma State, the top two teams in the conference, facing off in week one of conference play of both of those respective teams. Speaking of a tough one, Kansas State is number 3 on this list. Chris Kleiman and his guys come back and make a statement win against Arizona, who is supposed to be further up in this in these rankings, and was certainly talked about as one of those teams in the top 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 on this one, and that's not where they are right now. They're having a hard time.
Number 4, Iowa State. They had a bye this week, so off week after the big win a week ago at Iowa. So Iowa State got to enjoy this weekend. And then number 5, the team that's atop the standings, but number 5 in our power rankings, that's the UCF Knights after their big win at TCU. That's a breakthrough victory as they, like many of these newcomers from a year ago, try to find their footing in year 2, and UCF's off to a hot start.
R.J. Harvey with 182, 189 yards, either way, in the 180s, and he is a force. Arizona State is 3-0. They got the win over Texas State down in San Marcos. The Bobcats are not anything to be. Is that what they are? Are they Bobcats?
Yeah,
Bobcats. They're Bobcats. They're not a slouch that I think that they have been in the past. And Arizona State, credit to Kenny Dillingham and his guys, they are 3-0. And they're absolutely rolling right now. Who knows if that's going to continue in conference play? But ASU right now outperforming what the pundits had. I'd say you, Mitch. I think you were one of those guys who said they were going to be really, really bad this year. No. BYU coming in at the 7th spot this week. I think they're up from 10 from last week. Big enough win over the weekend over Wyoming to impress both you and I. And it's nice to have them right there. They're 3-0. Look, they're 3-0. And there's something to be said about not losing any of those games in the out-of-conference play.
I think what's people are going to see with these power rankings is that the top 4 is kind of clear-cut right now.
Yes.
But from 5 to 14, or 5 to 12 maybe, it's razor thin, man. And you have one kind of off week, it's going to take a hit. And we're still kind of filling out these teams. I feel like we're going to go through another year where what can we expect week after week in this conference? But that's what makes it so fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it feels crazy to say BYU 7, but when you stack up the resumes and kind of stack up how all these teams are playing, hey, BYU's in the top half of this league through 3 weeks, and credit to Kalani Sitake and his program for jumping out to, once again, another fast start. Kalani's teams start season strong, and they're doing it once again. Number 8, a team that's tumbled after a blowout loss in the Little Apple. That's the Arizona Wildcats. To be expected. They were not competitive after that fast start early in that game, but then Kansas State just rolled. It wasn't I was surprised that Arizona was not more competitive.
The better quarterback in that game was Avery Johnson. He had 100 and something on the ground, and he also threw, not for a ton of yards, but threw a couple touchdowns. More to be said than the guy that I think a lot of people had as a possible all-conference performer, possible offensive player of the year in Noah Fafita, and you didn't see that yesterday. And Kansas State making a statement move with that. Colorado 9. Enough done in that game.
Is that a stretch? Is that at second glance it feels a little high? Maybe put them too high.
Well, but here's the thing: like, who would you switch them with? Because TCU's next, and maybe you flop TCU in Colorado. Excuse me, but after that, I mean Baylor. I still don't believe in those guys. Texas Tech has had a couple of games prior to yesterday that doesn't really speak to me there. But that's your order right there. You have Colorado at 9, TCU 10. I'm okay with that. Baylor 11, Texas Tech, Joe McGuire and his guys come back and put up 66 points. They needed that because it felt like they were in such a bad spot. It was a nice one.
I'd like to think Texas Tech responded after we said, hey, you're the 16th team last week in the power rankings.
That's what they saw.
So they responded with an old school Texas Tech shootout. Hey, a team that tumbled quite a bit, Kansas. And I think it's a sound the alarm moment where I kind of come away from that loss to UNLV on Friday. Not that UNLV's a bad team. That's not the issue.
So many people picked that upset. That upset because they saw the writing on the wall a little bit, and they were like, Kansas got something going on. And UNLV, on the flip side, has been playing some really, really good football. So it was a trap game for sure.
Jalen Daniels, it's teetering on territory where does he need to be benched? Ooh. Because he's turning the ball over way too much, and he's had 2 games where he's had game-winning drive opportunities, and he's struggling to manufacture drives, and he just looks so out of sync. Is it carryover from missing basically an entire season last year due to injury?
You're talking about former preseason Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12, Jalen Daniels. What?
With an Apple Watch dangling around his neck. That was so long ago.
Wow.
But yes, I'm a little bit worried about Jalen Daniels and this Kansas team. They are struggling mightily. Hey, they joined the ranks of these teams at the bottom. Number 14, Houston. They had a nice win, but still, it was just against Rice. Number 15, Cincinnati. They took down Miami, Ohio. And look, this feels wrong, but again, this is the balance of this league.
Yep.
Number 16, West Virginia. They're in the cellar right now. Their only wins against an FCS team. They got to show a little bit more. It's a tough schedule for Neil Brown and his team, but someone's got to take that 16th spot, and it just so happens to be the Mountaineers this week. But that, again, highlights the depth of this conference, and I think that's what you like every single week. Anything can happen.
Let's get you ready for next week. We've got the full slate of conference matchups. It's going to be a big one, not just for us here locally, but across the entire conference. We'll preview all of the upcoming schedules of the Big 12 right here on First and 12, brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. Happy shopping. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
And one of those columns you can read right now is the Big 12 Power Rankings. We discussed that, and you can read about that on KSLSports.com right now. And also commentary from BYU football players and coaches last night. It was kind of fun. There was some celebrating after the game, and out of nowhere, BYU cornerback Trey Alexander had this college football 25 stadium pulse sign that apparently they took from the Wyoming student section. They threw it at the BYU players onto the field, and Trey Alexander just walked away with it, I guess.
It's a nice little souvenir. I saw the picture of it that you put up on X. That's a nice one. That's one you want to put up in your. That's one you put up in the apartment in Provo.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. It's a great college dorm sign. Put it up with all the flags. So yes, it's a really good.
You tack
good
it
look
up
there.
You tack it up with a couple of push pins that your landlord's going to be pissed about at the end of the semester. It's fine. It's all good.
You know what we're not going to be pissed about is the Week 4 slate in the Big 12, Alex. This is a loaded slate as now we finally get into Big 12 play. I think just the fact that we now no longer have to break down 16 games. We can now just break down like 8 or 9.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's going to be just half the fun is really starting to drill down what we know about these teams, and it's a good slate next week.
Yeah, and, the conference delivers weird results. Like, it's very unpredictable. I think that's the part of that Utah fans are going to find out the way that BYU fans did last year, where it's just like, look, and you already saw something last week where I had basically put to bed in my mind that TCU was going to run away with that thing against UCF. UCF goes into Fort Worth. They beat TCU, and it's hard to predict those games. It's hard to actually kind of put it down on paper what you think's gonna happen because the conference delivers in a weird way. Now let's get out of the way one of the not as good games during the week, but still one that's going to have implications in the conference. And that's Houston at Cincinnati. These are two teams that right now kind of a question mark because they've had mixed results, and both of them need to get a lot better to be able to be considered part of that even mid-tier of this conference.
If you willingly choose to watch this game, we need to have a conversation. I know we love Big 12 football, but we need to have a conversation if you're picking Houston, Cincinnati in that 10 a.m. window on FS1. The game I would choose at 10 a.m. is Kansas at West Virginia on ESPN2 because that's one of those games where Neil Brown especially, I don't feel like West Virginia fans ever truly like him. I feel like they always try to put him on the hot seat, which is not deserved. He had a 9-win season last year.
This is a disaster of a situation for Kansas, too, because, my goodness, going into West Virginia after they've been so dang close. Kansas, if they play like they did, West Virginia could absolutely put it on these guys if Kansas shows up and Grimy puts together a bad offensive plan like he's been doing last couple weeks. Could you imagine Kansas going 1-3 after they lose to West Virginia? And you know what? It's a real freaking possibility next week.
Yeah, that would be a bad look for this revamped staff after the changes they experienced in the offseason. Iowa State has a non-conference game. They take on Arkansas State at noon. Arizona State, their first Big 12 game, they take their undefeated record down to West Texas. They go to Lubbock, 1:30 kick on FS1. That's a good barometer game to see how Arizona stacks up with the new look Big 12. Texas Tech got Taj Brooks back this week. That was a big boost to their offense. So that's going to be a good matchup.
Well, it's a weird ask for Kenny Dillingham and his guys. Hey, we need you to go to San Marcos, Texas 1 week. I need you to go back to Tempe, and then we're going to fly out to Lubbock. I mean, you're not going to get the prettiest parts of the state, but look, if they can show up like they did against the last three, I mean, they're 3-0, and they've had some decent games. They ran it up on Wyoming. They took care of business the next 2 weeks, including – I think people really did think that, hey, the shine is going to come off this week. They're going to lose to Texas State. They did not do it. And, man, that's two offenses right now that are kind of humming, which is wild to think that Arizona State has figured some things out on the offensive side. The crown jewel of the entire week is that 2 p.m. kickoff on Fox. That is Utah and Oklahoma State. I don't know if they've announced it yet, but it feels like it could be a game day situation there. I'm not sure how close that could be. It might be one of the highest-ranked couple of teams playing one another. I don't know how sexy of a matchup it is. On paper, it's a really, really good one. But Utah and Oklahoma State, I don't know what to think about this one yet because these are two wily coaches who've got a lot of talent between them, but they know how to get their teams up for games like this.
Yeah, just to clear the record too, Oklahoma Tennessee is College Game Day. It feels like
it is
ESPN,
going to be. Okay,
it feels like ESPN's just doing their investment a solid and going to favor the SEC venues. I hope that doesn't become the thing with Game Day because really Utah, Oklahoma State, which is tied to the Big 12, ESPN is, that would have made a lot of sense to go to Stillwater and that 2 p.m. window. I know that a lot of people wanted that nighttime, prime time, but I think that 2 p.m. spot will get a lot of good ratings. And that sort of thing matters in this conference where you need to deliver eyeballs and you're thinking long-term about your next media rights. You want to deliver a big audience for that 2 p.m. spot on Fox between Utah and the Pokes. That's the top two teams in the league right now. Another non-conference matchup, TCU goes to SMU in the Iron Skillet Battle. I'm very intrigued by that one.
The Iron Skillet Battle, is it at a Chili's? What do they do? Where are they doing this thing?
Yes, it's going to be.
Well, it's on the WB. Or I'm sorry, the CW. You tune into the CW.
When you said WB, I instantly thought of that frog.
Instantly,
and I guarantee everyone listening thought that too.
But the frog
SMU,
with the cane. Oh yeah, it's good stuff.
Coming off the bye week, SMU is after that loss to BYU, so we'll see how they'd look with Kevin Jennings now as their starting QB, and then TCU, of course, coming off the loss to UCF.
Yeah, Baylor at Colorado. Throw out the records when these two very inconsistent teams get together, Mitch. I don't know what to think about this one, but, that's why you play these because Baylor and Colorado, you could see either one of these teams blowing out the other one. Baylor going up to Boulder. It's a road game for them, but yeah, these are two teams that both need to get on track, and both are 2-1, but they both are also kind of a little bit fake when it comes to whether or not that 2-1 is a reality. We're going to find out a little bit more about both of these teams this weekend. That's your 6 p.m. Game on Fox.
And then the nightcap, BYU hosts Kansas State. It's Big 12 after dark at its finest. This is going to be an awesome game. I cannot wait. I bet Kansas State is going to bring a ton of fans to this game. They seem very excited to travel out to Provo. It's going to be electric. Fire knives. Cosmo's going to be crazy. Jake Retzlaff's going to throw some wild passes. It is going to be so electric. I cannot wait.
Wow. Look at you. They're going to be handing out cougar tails and ice cream to the visiting fans. Like, it's going to be crazy.
The broadcasters are going to look at the moon and devour cougar tails at midnight. Can they play beyond midnight because it's Sunday? Yes, they can.
Who knows? They will. I will tell you, our youngest, or not our youngest, but our 3-year-old daughter, described to my mom, who did not know what she was talking about. So she describes to her grandmother. And she said, "Oh, you went to the BYU game last week?" She goes, "Yeah." did you see the naked men on the field? And I thought that was an interesting thing to bring up to Grandma. That was the fire dancers. And
Yes.
for the record, they are honor code approved. So don't try to throw that at BYU. Kansas State, BYU, that's a big one. A late one. Does it make a difference that Kansas State's going to be playing? It's going to be – I know we make a lot about the body clock situation. Kansas State's playing a 9:30
Total
body
clock game.
I don't know
Total
what to think
body
about it.
clock game. It's
Come on.
You know for a fact I'm writing a body clock game story this week.
Body
It's
clock.
totally happening.
You got to get with like some sort of like sleep physiologist, Mitch. That's your homework this week. Well, the body clock actually. I got to get more body clock talk this week. My heavens. All right. Mitch, another fun one in the books, man. It's always good to do these. I know that it was a long travel week for you, and the police out there on the highway patrol for Wyoming, you put them through their paces, and I'll tell you what, it was a good one. So I'm glad you know that BYU's not heading out to Wyoming anytime soon. So anyway, it's always fun. It's another edition of First and 12 in the books, brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store, the freshest fruits and vegetables from local farms and your favorite local brands. Macy's Happy Shopping. For Mitch Harper, our producer Eric, we'll talk to you next week, everybody, right here on First and 12 on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.